Let me.
Welcome to the third and final part of our interview with Rabbi Yaakov Homnick about Rabbi Hutner.
Listen, we don't have to say that it's final. It says Zayd Nacha,
In Yitzhak, you're right.
But for this session.
With Rabbi Hutner and Chaim Berlin, and we've spoken about Rabbi Yaakov's own life. We've also spoken about Rabbi Hutner and Lubavitcher, and about the Rebbetzin, Hutner's wife. I want to talk today a little bit about the Rebbetzin Bruria. And my question is, did Rabbi Hutner, that was his only child, but did he see in her issues of sein gesund, like if she would have been a male, would have she been the Rosh Yeshiva? Would have she been the continuation? What do you say about that?
Yeah, that's no question. Certainly in the Litvish Yeshiva world, somebody has a son that's like the crown prince. Of course that would happen. By the way, I was told that the Rebbetzin had a few miscarriages.
The Rabbi Hutner's wife.
Yeah, that's what I was told by some of the women from my father's age group.
Okay.
And so this was the one child that was very precious. It was,
the name that he chose for her. Isn't that fascinating? Bruria.
Yes. It is fascinating. And I'll tell you a thing that I said to my father one time, right after the book came out, which she was very involved in putting out, and of course, with Rebbe. And in the book over there, she has a diary entry that he's writing when she was born. And in the diary entry, he says that among great Jewish women, there are different types. There are those who are great in their own right, and there are those who are great in their ability to build their husbands. And he hopes that his daughter will be zeicher to have both of these madrigas, which I think, they published it, I think, because they understood that in Pasha she was zeicher to both madrigas. But I said to my father that there's a piece missing here, because these women are great at being mothers, and he didn't include that. And when I told that to my father, it was completely, chapta treso. He was like, "Wow, that really knocked him for a loop." But so she's no question she was a great woman. My father told me that. This is well known, and I don't want to belabor it too much, but it's well known that Rabbi Hutner did not want Rabbi Yonason for his Adam originally. And in part of why Rabbi Hutner sent Rabbi Yonason to Belgium, to Rabbi Kreiswert for a while, and then he sent him to Detroit to be a helper with Box in some way. It was a Rebbe or a Charlotte Mason, but Rabbi kept sending him away because he didn't want the shidduch in a certain way. Now, later years, he was very happy, very, very proud, because the Rebbe's other brother, and they learned together and all this. But there was a truth where there was also one Talmud at Chaim Berlin who everyone thought was going to get the shidduch. His name was Gershon Weinreb. And
Gershon Weinreb?
Yeah. And in later years, he went through terrible Yisur. But my father, I even went to visit him a few times in his last sickness. Went through a lot. He was a Rosh Yeshiva in South Fallsburg Yeshiva for a long time, working for the Gorelick family. But and a big Talmid Chacham, and he suffered a lot. So, but my father's a psychologist, so sometimes a little psychology playing into his reasoning. My father felt that he never got over the fact that he got passed over for that shidduch because it was believed among the Bachar that he's getting the shidduch. My father also told me, and this whether this had any real impact in the real world or not, I don't know. My father very much believed in his own abilities to make things happen. Then my father told me that he once pulled Rabbi Hutner into the cloakroom at Chaim and said, "Let's strategize how we're going to get you to shidduch." So, and he came up with strategies. But so my father always felt that he played a role in bringing that shidduch about. Now, what happened with a very interesting thing that happened with me is when my mother was nifta. So I was the oldest, 10 years old. My brother Tzvi, who was in Lubavitch, he was 4.5, or maybe 4.5, and I was 10. So my father told me later, I mean, some years later, obviously, that Rabbi Anderson and the Rebbetzin approached him about the idea of taking me into the house while he looks for a shidduch. They'll adopt me temporarily. And my father felt he turned him down, but he told me that the reason why he turned him down was because he felt he wouldn't be able to ask me back. They'll find a shidduch a year later, that would in the end he got married a year later, but some years later, he felt that he can't predict how long it'll be, and then he'll end up losing me to them, and he didn't want to give me up. So that's kind of a real inside baseball, behind the scenes story that my father told me.
That's for sure. So, do you believe and think that Rebbetzin Bruria was micromanaging in a way Chaim Berlin all the years from Eretz Yisrael, or not?
No. That for sure is a gross error that a lot of people had, but the error was created by the fact that Rabbi Hutner had her write out in her handwriting the early Maamar.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people thought that she's actually writing the text. It wasn't like that at all. Hutner used to sit and dictate. And in later years, once she was married and he thought it wasn't sneeze anymore for Eshes Ish to do it, so he used to do it with Rav Shmuel Orman, was his secretary, was called. And Rav Shmuel used to type it on his old typewriter. And so that's where it went from her to him. So we all know, the people from the inside know that she wasn't involved in any part of the creative process. She was just a scribe, and she ran. But it might have been, in retrospect, a kind of a miscalculation because of the fact that a lot of people began to assume, like, oh, she's the genius who's really writing it. But it was not like that. Now, again, he was certainly very proud of her, but one of the things that he told me about, I remember it was concerning the Miami. I don't remember how it came up, but he told me that Rebbetzin Bruria, she gets rid of the Zionists from the girls. He said he was like proud that somehow she was doing this, that she was having some kind of anti-Zionist influence. I know in my time, I don't know how long it went, but for many years, at least like 10, 20 years, the term paper that you wrote at the end of the year in BJJ was you had to read a Ish al Chaim about the grace of Chaim Zanfeld and write a report. So it was like propaganda, to the Yeshiva Yoshin.
So on that note, what's your feelings about Rabbi Hutner being impacted by Rabbi Kook and religious Zionism?
Yeah, so I saw some of your footnotes, very nice, and nothing to disagree with there. I was told that in my father's time that in one of the circuits, as you point out, not in both circuits, but in one of his circuits, he had a picture of Rav Kook. And
he was related. He was related.
Yeah, he was related to the wife of his son.
Right, Tzvi Hudin.
Right. So he was related, and that's how he got in there. And then they had a real close shachas. But and I read Reb Neria's whole thing about Rav Hutner's relationship, which the thing about Reb Neria is that I don't know if you know, this is also interesting. When my father went to Eretz Yisrael, 19 years old, Rabbi Bruria hired my father. It's the Talmud of Rabbi Hutner. He hired my father to give shiurim in Yeshiva's Kfar Haraya, Mizrahi Yeshiva, that he in charge of. My father was saying shiurim at 19 years old, and my father used to drink this Israeli bira, like in small amounts, but when he left, he had never thrown out the bottles, and he thought, "Oh boy, this guy was a shikha." But it's a funny thing.
Let's go back. That's a Madova.
Yeah, that's Madova. Not that's Madova. So that's Madova with Rav Kook is like this. I learned there all the years. I never heard one mention of Rav Kook. But again, maybe my father's time they heard a little more. In my time, it was all wiped away. But Rabbi Buxbaum told me, and similar to what you quoted in the footnotes, Rabbi Buxbaum, I think his name is Buxbaum, the one who runs Machon Maria.
Yeah.
So he said that when he made Rav Hutner the Nasi of the Machon at a certain point. And he said that, so he asked the Gedalim in Eretz Yisrael permission, could he make Rav Hutner the Nasi of the Machon? So Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says he has a Kapeda Rav Hutner. The Kapeda is that he heard that he holds he was a Talmid in many ways of Rav Kook. And then now, because Rav Kook's out of fashion, that he is not being mechaber him, he took down his picture, and he didn't hold it. It's like, is your Rebbe, you stand tall. So no, and then also remember Rav Hutner released the Teres HaNazah the second time. He took out all the haskamas,
right?
But he mainly did it because he wanted to take out Rav Kook's haskama,
right?
And later he had a kapeda on a publishing house in Yerushalayim that put it out with the other two and not Rav Kook. That he sent him a message. He was mocked on that. He says, "Not right." But what he did was he took them all out. He said, "I'm a big boy. I don't need haskamas anymore." But it just showed you he was a little bit trying to erase that, the footprints. And
right,
and
but his machshava, but in what he taught in machshava, were there
honestly, I don't know.
Tracings of Rav Kook.
So some people who claim they know Rav Kook's Torah very well say that they see something. I don't know Rav Kook's Torah well enough to make a judgment. I would try to open it here and there, and he had a way of weaving from subject to subject, and I needed more concrete, like a question, answer, conclusion. I always had trouble with that kind of thing. So I don't know if Cook well enough to make a judgment, and I don't know too many people who know it well enough either.
Right.
Some people say they see influences of Shas Emes or tzaddik. I don't know.
Right. Now, did he in his schmoozing in his talks? Did he like? I know he did, but the question is, the Chassidish, the Sfas Emes, the Melech, and was it felt like he had a yediyah and he really enjoyed sharing Chassidish Torahs or not?
I didn't get that vibe. I mean, every once in a while he would say a word from Kedoshi Elyon. We had some of the kinuyim, like the Meiri has all these kinuyim for the different gedolim. They used to do that, and people who knew, they said, "Oh, Kedoshi Elyon, that's this one." I don't know, I don't know, but I do know he almost never said a really Hasidic word. But he almost never said a really Mussadic word. I was sitting one time. I was sitting one time with Rabbi Yehuda Edelman Shlita. He lives in Lakewood now. He's an older man already. And Rabbi Yehuda Edelman Shlita was a big Talmid Chacham, but he also had a different style of learning than the other Chaim is interesting man. And I learned from him Chavrusa once, man. And he's looking at his sefer, and then he starts laughing. It wasn't the type that laughed too much, so I guess why he's laughing. So, because Rav Hutner, the head of Machon Yerushalayim, had written Hagdama to I think it's before she Talmud and Maki.
Right. Yeah.
He wrote a Hagdama. In the Hagdama, he quotes the author of Slobodka, who said that Loisi Aram Gedalim Kilam Chastei, and then it was the two Kilam Chastes. Then that one that and then it says Hashem Shalom Shalos V'Yayim, it's the Yerech Shalos B'Olam. So there's really three things. They're all about the Shemesh and the Yerech, and it's divided up. And so he said, so that the author said that Bruria is one thing, that's its own chashivas, and Seder is also a chashivas to be beside. So that was his word that he has in the letter from that sefer that came out. I remember, and Rabbi Hutner starts laughing. He says, "I'm learning by Rabbi Hutner for 30 years. I never heard him quote the Alter one time."
Really?
That's what he said.
Well, you never heard him quote the Alter either?
No. So other than that place in writing where he did it, and remember he did it in a place that was gonna possible because there's too much achas to cook. So he might have had a little ulterior motive, to try to say no, it's from the Alter, not from a cook. You could, I don't know, but I'm just sharing with you. He didn't say the b'shem Amri thing. He didn't do too much, like the Rashi al Torah.
Right.
Very rarely.
Right. But okay. Now there are letters between him and the Lubavitcher Rebbe simply in Chassidus. I mean, I'm talking about, they're talking about Kabbalah, Chassidus, deep in Yonim. Did that ever come out, or that was never in public?
No, it's never in public. I heard now a rumor that Rabbi Yonason is going to put out his Pirush on the Safradit's news. So we always heard that there was a Pirush, and that they're not putting it out. Nightly, I heard they are putting it out. Meantime, I don't know. But and I had a chava who snuck under the porch once in Mata stuff, and to hear of the learning with Rabbi Yonason by Yishal Shuz's time. He used to learn Kabbalah with him. And he said he stood under there to hear it, and he told me, he says, except that all he remembers that at one point he said, this is the deep shot in the Rashban, the Seches Brachas, who says that in thought there is no language.
Mm-hmm.
Language is only in speech and not in thought. So whatever he was saying from Kabbalah at the ceremony, he said that's the Pshat and the Rashi. So he said, those are the only words he could even say, and he doesn't even know what he was using as the Pshat.
Right.
So he was very secretive about the Kabbalah learning, and of course his Adam became part of it. Besides no question. And apparently he used to learn with Rav Volba also, who was Mashgiach and Ber Yaakov, and supposedly learned some Kabbalah with him, but I don't think they were doing it as equals. I think it was more like tutoring him.
The Kabbalah is Chassidus.
Right.
Chabad Chassidus. Chabad Chassidus is not Kabbalah.
So there's a whole series. Yeah, I know. So there's a whole series of anecdotes where he always liked to let you know that he knows these things. But there's a whole series of anecdotes. Like I'll tell you real fast. One time there was a friend of mine had a breast of a safe. And he told him, take it out. And he says, when she was against breast, he says, you can give me Bechina and Likuti Aran, what's it called? Likuti Maran. He says, you give me a Bechina and Likuti Maran from the beginning to the end. So not that I don't know it, but you don't need it.
Right.
And so there was several stories in that vein.
What about Tanya? What did he ever say about Tanya?
Well, now I'll tell you this story that it happened one time when I was by the table, Shvisha Pesach. So it was a little bit like stick, but he comes into the tish, and he says, now the way it worked was nobody opened their mouth saying a word. You sat by the table, you sat in silence. Only he talked, unless he solicited.
Right.
And so that was a kind of like malchus sticker thing that none of my chaverim had this chinuch that I had to sit there for hours, not say a word. But
you're talking about yeshiva or this house?
No, and he would do it in the yeshiva. He would make yontif meals for a very select group of invitees. He didn't have the yontif in his house. It was always in yeshiva, downstairs. And
but it was you're saying it was for a select group, not like Purim. Purim was open to everybody.
Yeah. No, this was a select group. Would be, and I was never invited when it was just a meal. But Shvisha Pesach and Shmini Atzeres, there was a Maimah Leila. Or at some point he signaled people could come in, so everyone would gather outside. Then they say the Maimah Leila. So I used to ask to be at the Suda, so I didn't have to be in the crowd with the Maimah. So I was a few of those Sudas. So anyway, so this one time he comes and says, because I prevented you from getting a shir in Tanya. So,
what do you mean prevented? What do you mean prevented him?
So because the Lubavitch used to send out these shluchim to teach, to give a share on Nachman Shel Pesach. And you know, in Satmar they had a fight one time with the cars and the whole thing. They came on police cars and the whole crazy thing. So it was always, we were all aware of the conflicts. But in Chaim they came and he said to them, and so someone said, you can't do anything without asking the Yeshiva. So this is what he told us. He said, I wasn't there in the car. This is what he told us. He said, so I have gesagt. He said, I'll tell you what we'll do. I'll send my Talmidim to Lubavitch, 770, to teach Pachad Yitzchak. And whatever reception they get over there, I'll give you the same reception over here.
No, but I'm asking, the machshava of the Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya and Tanya and the Torah, did he, you know, like Rav Soloveitchik was fascinated, and he learned it mamish, and he spoke. Right. I'm asking if Rabbi Hutner, you know, did it ever come up or not really?
Well, you know, it's a fascinating thing that the Lubavitch Rebbe had a Litvish tutor and Rav Soloveitchik had a Lubavitch tutor. Who used to tell him, don't tell your father I'm learning this with you. And he learned things from behind his back. But Rav Hutner never, to my recollection, again, my father's generation, the whole other generation, Rav Hutner was younger, it was a different, and I never heard it from my father either about this, but I never heard him directly reference the Tanya or specific, you know, the idea of learning Hasidus per se.
Right. What about his feelings about the Rebbe's mitzvahim and outreach? That you probably can talk about. That was in the 70s. My understanding is he wasn't a happy camper about that. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. So again, I never heard him speak about it, but I knew from all the other oilams. So I'm giving you secondhand, you know, Edmund But he was always very upset. If he saw a Lubavitcher guy with the tefillin, he was very upset about it. And of course, he had that whole series of letters with the Rebbe. I got into a big fight with some of the Lubavitcher bloggers a few years ago because they didn't know how to read those letters. There's a lot of coded language in those letters. You have to know how to read. Like, for one thing, in the letters, if you go back and forth, you see the Rebbe keeps calling them shluchim, and he keeps calling them talmidim. So if you understand how these gedolim operate, that is a big battle going on, where the Rebbe is saying, you know, I have shluchim, and he's saying, you don't have shluchim. You're a Rebbe. You have talmidim. You're not a boss that's moving, you know, chess pieces on a chessboard. So that, you know, that was a worldview battle going on. It's very subtle if you know how to read it. And at a certain point, where, for example, the Rebbe accuses him of something, of meaning something or hiding his meaning or something, and he says, "You're accusing me of ma'aseh chidudim." Now, ma'aseh chidudim is a dirty word in Masechet Sanhedrin. So to see between gedolim somebody using that word, that's people who are very upset when they're writing it. So the you know, the nerves were rubbed raw, and also the Rebbe gave him a certain mashal over there about where he says that when I bring a cow to the mizbeach, do I know what's going on inside the cow before I shech the cow? Some kind of, he was trying to make a mashal about, you know, do you know what people's thoughts are about the tefillin there? And Rav Hutner held that was a very poor quality mashal, and he told Rabbi Lasker, who was his mashamash at that time, he said, we can never let the world see this letter because this is subpar kind of thinking, and we don't, you know, we got to protect the Rebbe from this getting out. I must have angered him, and this is really not. Of course, the later the Lubavitcher guys put out the letters, but the Chaim guys, Rebbetzin David never put out the letters in the book of letters. So you know, so they definitely had rai, like to say. But it was clearly a deep love between them, as you point out, no question. And now the Chaim guys, I will tell you, were resentful because they felt the Lubavitcher Rebbe was taking credit for getting him out of, you know, pulling a mifus of some kind to get him out of the hostages.
The Lubavitcher Rebbe didn't take credit. Maybe the Chassidim take credit.
Right.
But the Rebbe said what he said. He said the Rebbe said b'schus the maral.
Right. And that was and so the way they like to say it over in Chaim, they say this, how they say it over in more recent times, they say it's machlekes the Lubavitcher Rebbe and Rebbe Lapia and Rabbi Chaim Eves, how Rabbi Hutner got out. Because the voucher ever said he got out the Swiss of Morales Yahrzeit. He got out right around the time of Morales Yahrzeit. And so they don't say anything worse than that. They just say Rebbe was telling the Morales Yahrzeit, and Chaim Eves was telling in their Rebbe Lapian was nifta, and he went to Shemayim, and he davened to get him out.
And Elu,
Elu, right? That's I always said. Elu, Mechatesa.
exactly.
You know reason you have to choose one over the other. I think they're both tremendous insights.
I don't know if you know. I put in the book, and I try it. I believe Rabbi Hutner came, and maybe with family, to thank the Rebbe for his ishtadlus, whatever. Right. A month or two after.
Yeah, it's in the book, absolutely. And I didn't know there's a lot of information on that I wasn't aware, but it fits very well. And just in general, you should know that Rabbi Shechter, the current Yeshiva, is not in full health. Yeah. So when Bachum used to come over to me after Rav Hutner was nifter, it was this thing that Rav Hutner said while he was, now again, he was like in a semi-comatose state, and he was saying all kinds of odd things. And basically, there were, I have Chaverim who were there. They kept the notes exactly what he said, but they weren't supposed to be publicized. But one of the things he said, something about Travis my Chaver, but also he said that there's a machlokes between my Chaver and Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky holds that before Mashiach could be like this, the Rebbe holds before Mashiach could be like this. He said, did you see that?
No.
Yeah, so he says, Svetlana Commander Rivka.
Commandevin?
No, that's the word he used, Commander Rivka. I'd never heard it before. And I guess the people said it means like a big tumult and a big battle. But that's what he said, it's big. But it was not a good matzah. And they were very mocked on guys who said over things they heard in their matzah, because they asked people, they wanted to have Sherman 24 hours a day. And some Yeshiva Bachram volunteered, but they were supposed to keep the mouth shut. You have another Gadol, and it's not in its best condition. Yeah. But basically, so after that time, people came to Rabbi Shechter and they said, I hear Chaim Berlin, Rabbi Hutner was fighting a lot of things about what he was doing, and now you're telling me that he said this, and Rabbi said, no, you don't understand. They were Chaver. They had machlokes on issues of substance, and they stuck to their positions. They're still Chaver.
From Rabbi Hutner's world standpoint, did he go into Shemayim? Did he feel that he succeeded at Avegestellt a ganze Deur, a yeshiva that has, everlasting? Was he satisfied? Was he satisfied with the results, or he really wanted to have that thing in Eretz Yisrael, and that never really took off?
Well, I think it's elevated. There really came Chaim. I think he was very satisfied. He knew that he was miming a tremendous project that's going to have the ability to survive through the earth, which, and that's a great thing for someone to be zeicher to that. Lav called him zeicher. But and I had a chava who Shalom Weiss. I have a chava. I mean, he lives in Tifrach. He's a very fine fellow. And if you could get him to talk, he could probably tell you a lot of things.
What's his last name? Shalom Weiss?
Yeah, Shalom Weiss. He was Mishamashim in the last years. And he told me, this is a tangent, but he told me that on Rosh Hashanah of that year, 1980.
1980, yeah.
On Rosh Hashanah, he was sitting with the Yeshiva, and there was a window open, and a bee came flying in from the outside, went straight, made a beeline, the bee went straight and stung the Yeshiva, and then turned around and flew back up. So he understood that was a simon that he's not going to live out the year. That's a pretty fascinating episode. But so Shalom Weiss told me that, again, what was it? Remind me the question.
My question was, that really he, as much as the Yeshiva Chaim Berlin and
yeah.
But really his heart and soul was Eretz Yisrael, and he really wanted to have that type of success in Eretz Yisrael, and that didn't happen.
Right. So either Shalom Weiss told me or Aaron Kaufman, who's in New Jersey, who runs the Yeshiva in New Jersey. I'm forgetting the name of the town right. Oh, Connecticut. So one of those two told me that Rabbi Hutner said to them, they really Chaim is the best yeshiva, but there's a kinna they don't acknowledge. The other yeshivas don't want to acknowledge that Machmas kinna. So I found that to be charming, because I don't think it's it's a very good yeshiva. Like I always said, the it's all one yeshiva. Everyone has a piece, but I never fooled myself into thinking Chaim was the best yeshiva. It has its very powerful milas. It's a great place. It should continue to do well. I'm proud that I worked over there. And my son-in-law learns the Endokyle. It's a great place. But that at least was a window into that. He had a satisfaction that he had really put some Shtadavek something in Chaim. But this was sort of an afterthought in his life that the Seif Yom, he thought, maybe he may have had some neder that he did when he was younger, and he, I have to go back there to Israel and leave an impression. And the truth is, to be fair, a few Gedolim tried to do it, and it didn't work. I mean, the Rebbe himself, he's stuck in America. The Rebbe Gifter from Telz went to Eretz Yisrael to make a branch, and he had to come back. Yeah, and I spoke to him after he came back. He was very uplifted about his time there, but very brokenhearted that he couldn't.
Devastated.
Right, and so the Abisha had seemed like a rule that you had to choose where you want to be Matzliach. You can't go to both places, but so Rabbi Hutner did in the end. I feel I don't know how. If he got to a point where he was really happy about it, I don't know. But he did leave Yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. You go there now; it's a beautiful place.
Right.
And I'll tell you, this is a very funny kind of a tangent. But I went to a Shev Brachas for my cousins in Eretz Yisrael, and that my cousin's daughter married Reb Shlomo Freifeld's grandson. His name is Shlomo Freifeld, one after his grandfather died. So she married Shlomo Freifeld, and he was learning in Pachad Yitzhak, Chaim Berlin, and his Chaverim came to speak, and one of his Chaverim said, during my Chassan Shmuz, Rabbi Yonis told me something, and I was like shocked, because when I was in Pachad Yitzhak, Rabbi Yonis didn't have any kind of a relationship with guys where he could give them a Chassan.
Right.
So that showed me that, and then I went over to that fellow. I approached him, and he said, "Yeah, no, every chassan comes in. They get a schmooze. There's a lot of, insight into how to conduct a marriage." And so that showed me that showed me how I felt like Hashem showed me that, because He wanted me to see that the Taka was Matzliach is showing. If you have that kind of yeshiva, Talmidim with that type of loyalty, I come into the base managed it's packed. People are learning. It's called Torah. So I feel like it was more la'achamaisai,
right,
with the Adam, but he was able to be mimed in two places, the real concept there.
I want to go back now to Rabbi Hutner in Berlin. Why was he there? What's your knowledge?
Well, I know what they always say if you bring it up to Rabbi Yonis, they always tell you right away he was never enrolled in anything. He never. Because and they always say, no, don't bring a riot from the Rebbe and Rebbe Salvechik. Rebbe Salvechik got a doctorate. The Rebbe was enrolled in the Sorbonne. Rebbe Hutner was never enrolled. He only audited classes. Now you see, he left after 4 months. He didn't even stay for a full semester. But look, there was no question that in those years there was a certain curiosity going on, and my father was once angry at me that I was teaching in Har Sameach Bali Tshuva. So I had a koil to Siddharm, and at night I taught Bali Tshuva and Har Sameach. So he told my Chava, what's Yaakov David doing? And my Chava said, he's being mashlim himself. Something he's doing for his own Hashlom. So my father was mefuyas. But I was a little angry because I didn't think of those terms. I thought I have to be Mizaka Kleisrael however I can. I didn't think I'm doing Hashlama for me. I thought I'm doing for Kleisrael. But somehow, it was my father had some of that Litvish influence where like you have to be mashlim yourself. That's the focus. And I think
Rabbi Hutner in Berlin.
yes, I think Rabbi Hutner Bruria went as part of a hashlama, and there was the idea was to be a real Adam Gadol B'Torah, you have to have some time and what's going on in the other chachmas, this and that. I mean, I grew up in America, so we're not so we don't even think that college is other chachmas. It's just people draining a cup for a few years. And with wacky political views trying to conquer you on your way to try to make a living. And we don't have this whole idea. I'm going to go to Berlin. You'll build, you know. We don't think that way. But
did you see what I wrote?
I think so.
I don't think you saw what I wrote. What did I write? Why you went to Berlin? I gave testimony from Rabbi Sher's daughter, Rabbi Isaac Sher's daughter.
Yeah,
I heard it on a tape from her mouth.
Yeah.
Basically, Rabbi Hutner wanted to marry her.
Right.
And
no, but you wrote that he's the one who messed up the shidduch by saying we have to meet in Berlin in order to get married.
The father of Rabbi Isaac Sher, thought he's off the wall. I mean, come on. Yeah. What are you making a big splash? Like, forget it.
Yeah, it's a fact. Who knows?
I mean, I'm asking you, knowing, do you Seforim begoyes? Could it be possible?
It's very hard to say. It was many years later. He definitely. There's a lot of stories which showed how much worldly knowledge he had. My father told me that in the old days in Stone Avenue, Chaim building, there was an Italian elevator operator, and Rabbi Hutner used to talk to him in Italian.
Wow. And
so the Bachram asked the elevator operator, is his Italian any good? He just knows a few words. And he says, are you kidding? If I could speak Italian like that, I'd be working in the United Nations, not in the elevator. So, and then a Chaver of mine told me that he saw that he was reading, had been reading a novel. As he had a meeting with him, and he saw a book that was on the floor, with the careful, and it was a novel in German, the Geschichte von Reisen, something like this. And then Rabbi Zvulun Lieb, who was nifta in the last year or so, told me. Rabbi Zvulun Lieb told me that Rabbi Hutner said to him, the heintige Bachram, they don't know how to use Bein Hazmanim. It's down the Dreher cup. He says, I used one Bein Hazmanim to teach myself French. It's a Shena Sprach. So I have Aedis on French, German, and Italian.
Right.
So he definitely had an
interest. He would benefit. And you could see him, going to Berlin because of the culture and the knowledge.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah. What about his relationship with the Satmar Rav?
Well, it is a fascinating thing. And this is something that Taka relates to a thing I saw in your book, in one of the footnotes, which is Rav Hutner had this thing where anytime people started speaking too much in the luft, he would cut off shachs with them. A very interesting thing. Like he told my father that he doesn't have shachs anymore with the Kloisenberger, but Zeit Malachim. And I mentioned Zeit Malachim, I can't have a shachs. Then let's say he had a lifelong friendship with Reb Tzvi Yehuda Cook. But then when Reb Goren did the thing where he was mated and mamza, and there was a whole big tumult about it.
Oh boy!
So Reb Hutner called Reb Tzvi Yehuda and said, "Listen, we gotta fight it." And he said, if my father and Shemayim allowed him to become the Ashkenazi chief Rav, I have to assume that he knows what's going on. So Rav Hutner cut off his relationship with him also. He said, if you know what's going on in Shemayim, I can't operate like that. And so that was like a style that he had.
That's very interesting, because they say that's the Rebbe, they had a chavrusa, and then he stopped it because he says, bis jetzt, but Anossi.
Right.
I don't know what a Nasi is, but
Right.
it ain't you, and it doesn't
Right.
this whole idea. So we're not
Right.
learning anymore together.
Right. So I think that it's a little bit of a shitasa there.
Yeah, very interesting. You tell me this.
Right. So now back to the Satma.
Yeah.
So with the Satma, he told my father that he liked that fact about the Satma, that you can argue with him and with reason. And he contrasted it to Klezmer. So he said that because the Satma used to not sit in the Sukkah Shmini Atzeres because of code of a Hasidic general kind of a minute. Reb Tzadok wrote a sefer to defend it, and then in America, we had Moshe with Shigadolim, a few of them started up with him about it, and they argued it out with him, and he went through the sukkahs, and he said, all right, and he started, he would go into the sukkah and Shmini Atzeres for a few minutes, whatever it was, so Rabbi Hutner said that to me is something that I can handle with a man who has enough intellectual honesty that he can say, you know what, I'm taking a step back.
Right, but my understanding is, and this is when both of you lived, on Rockaway, that he used to go Hoshana Rabbah. I think I was told he used to go to the Satmar Rebbe and to be in the base medrash at some point. Hoshana Rabbah. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I think that's before my time. My father took me a few times to Hoshana Rabbah, and I think that must.
He carried on the Satmar Rebbe was carrying on.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I told you in the letter, my father was the only Litvak who he let dance on the tish.
Right. Yeah, that was good.
But no, Hutner definitely had a relationship with the Satmar, and I think there was one story where they were fighting something together, and Rav Hutner went to the armory. They made a gathering in the armory. I remember, but I don't remember what they were fighting. And Rav Hutner attended. Very unusual for him. But he seemed to be, like he told me that about his daughter that she gets the Zionism out of them. I was growing up in a time where I didn't see I didn't think that was the fight anymore. I thought that was the fight from the last door. I wasn't worried about Zionism.
So as a final point, what did Rav Hutner have a confidant? Did he have like a best chaver? That who was the one person? I'm talking now not amongst Talmid, but amongst Gedolim, Rebbes, whatever, that he would confide in. Anybody or not?
I don't know. I know they used to say that in the early days, but I only heard this obviously second or third hand, that he liked to sit with the Beyana Rebbe at his tish, and that during the Holocaust, Rav Hutner helped the Beyana Rebbe because by the fact that he had a yeshiva, he was able to sign for. There was a rule in immigration that you had to say you're going to make a living, and so anyone who had a company or an institution, every Bunam signed for all kinds of people. So Rav Hutner had an institution, and that gave him the power. And once he got the power within the board, when he first started, he was just an employee. Once he got the power within the board, he was signing for people and he saved people. I met a Yid, an Alta Yid from Denver, told me Rav Hutner saved me. He gave me my certificate. So he used to sit by the Beyana Rebbe's tish, and I heard from people that they said, "Oh, so-and-so he's a certificate." He turned to Rav Hutner and said, "Take care of that guy." And he said, "No problem." So there was.
What about he used to learn? They say with the Radzina, right? And the Radzina was the only one. Were you at you weren't at Bruria's wedding. Your father, I'm sure, was, right?
Right. My father was, sure.
Right. So I was told by someone who lives here who told me that the only person was Friday, and it was the Radzina Rebbe was there. The Moshe wasn't there. The Yaakov wasn't there. No one was there.
I know that the whole line of family, that they had a big curvature. Rav Hutner treated them like gold. I mean, he definitely had some strong relationship there.
You think it went back to Poland to still Poland?
I wonder.
The Ishbitzer, the liner, the Ishbitzer.
A lot of these things, I'll tell you a clear story that just to show you how closed off a lot of us were from his inner life.
Yeah.
But Rav Aaron Laska, who was his shamus, for a long time, and he told me the story himself. So a guy comes, he opens the door, and someone's knocking, he opens up, and there's a man there, a dignified looking man with a goatee and an older man with a wife. And he says, "Can I help you?" And he says, "Please tell Rabbi Hutner that his brother's here." So now he had never heard that Rabbi Hutner had a brother. This, he's the other guy his whole life. His father learned Rabbi Hutner and worked for him. He learned Rabbi Hutner and worked for him. He's his personal shamus. And he never knew that he had a brother. And the brother was from too, and he had a chashuva from kids also. And he lived in Paris, the brother. But he didn't know it, so he thought it's a gag, it's a practical joke,
Right.
All right, I'll tell him. He goes in and says, "There's a guy out there who says that Yeshiva's brother." He goes, "Oh, my brother, send him in," So so it gives you an idea. Can you imagine? You're famous. I mean, like Ronald Reagan, his brother visited the White House one time, and everyone was, "Oh, he has a brother." It was like that kind of same feeling of
Right.
It wasn't
Right.
part of our reality until
Right. Okay, Yaakov, thank you, Rabbi Yaakov. Thank you very much, Yasher Koyach. It was too fast.
Yeah.
It's over. We could spend hours and hours, but Oit Kazoyin Lamoyed, Matzliach Zayin, everything.
Amen.
And thank you for your time, and thank you for reading carefully. And I look forward to more comments, constructive criticism, and for future. Yasher Koyach.
The pleasure is mutual, and you're showing a lot of courage by writing these books, both in Lubavitch and out of Lubavitch. So I applaud you.
Thank you. Zeit is Bye bye. Take care. Shalom.